everybody to another Bruce Starr Show. And again, we're here talking about an amazing time in show business, really. A time when it's called by many the golden age of comedy. There might have been a golden age of comedy 20 or 30 years before that. I'm not sure. I know there were some great people all along the line that gave birth to this wonderful world of stand-up comedy. But around 1980 or 81, and I went out to Los Angeles in 81, something incredible happened right before my eyes. The Improv, which is where I was first went and started spending literally every night that I could. All of a sudden, right before my eyes, I started being involved with something that was nothing had to do with me. I was there, a show called Evening at the Improv. And Evening at the Improv was, to me at the time, was the most, it was an incredible TV show I'd ever seen because it had on 3 to 4 upcoming at the time, now they're all household names, upcoming at the time young comedians. And then they would have people like Milton Berle as the host, Jackie Mason as the host. I mean, Phyllis Diller, I can go on. They must have done 100 shows. And what was fascinating about it was not only did I get a chance to see the shows, but I had a chance to literally be a part of the shows. And it was an amazing time, literally in the background, behind the scenes, in the audience, at the bar. When they would do the scenes, they would need us to be in the background and just to be a part of the scenery. It was an amazing time. I had a chance to meet just about everybody, and not just meet just about everybody. Literally, we hung out together every night. They had a bar to the left when you walked in, and a dining area to the right. And that's where we got pizza and everything else that there was to eat there. And then there was the upstairs, and there was the round table in the corner downstairs where Bud and his people always hung out. Not Bud Friedman, but another Bud Robinson. It was an amazing time. And I consider myself so lucky that having been a personal appearance agent for as many at one time, 35 stand-up comedians, many of them, like I said, household words, Howie Mandel and the unknown comic Murray Langston and Paul Reiser and Bobby Slayton and a whole bunch of other people, Paula Poundstone, I could just go on. And then there was a bunch of great, incredible guys that were very, very talented that I got a little closer to and had a chance to literally sit with and get to know. Jerry Seinfeld would come so many nights I can't even remember. And that was before he got his show. I remember there was talk about him doing a show about stand-up comedy and comedians. And I said, man, that sounds like a great idea. That has to be done. You guys have to do something about it. And then, of course, I didn't hear anything about it for another, 10 years. But all of a sudden, there was Jerry Seinfeld's show. And it was just great to be there for so much of what was to happen. And one of the guys that I represented is a guy named Glenn Hirsch, New York born, Queens born, stand-up comedian. Glenn, thank you so much for being a part of this time when we're recording history, recording what went on during that incredible time.
Yeah,
mostly in Los Angeles at the Improv and at the Comedy Store. So welcome. I can't wait to learn more about you, learn more about your history, learn more about your experiences out there.
Well, thanks, Bruce. Good to be with you.
Thank you.
You brought the brick wall with you.
Yes, I did. I put up every brick.
Makes me feel very comfortable. And thanks for having a conversation. Good night. Yeah, I listening to the introduction. Absolutely, it made me. I'm at the point in my life where reminiscing takes up a good chunk of the day, especially with the pandemic. So talking about what we're about to talk about and reminisce about is very exciting. And thank you for the opportunity.
Imagine how lucky we are and were to be a part of that incredible golden age of comedy.
Well, yeah, you know what? I know you're starting in 1980, which is a very important date for me too, year for me. But I started in the late 70s in New York City. When when I came into that club, I went to an improv night, a club, the club on 44th and Ninth. One night, a friend, I didn't even know it existed. A girl I was going out with said, "Want to go to the improvisation?" I said, "What the hell is that?" She took me to the improv that night. I sat in the back of the room and I watched that night Andy Kaufman,
Oh God.
Freddie Prinz,
Oh God.
Pete Walker,
Oh my
Richard
God.
Lewis,
Oh my God.
Elaine Boozler,
Oh my God.
Ed Bluestone,
Oh my God.
Bob Shaw, Alan Zweibel.
Oh my
I
God.
mean, did I mention Richard Lewis? Yes. All of these people, one after the other. I just sat there mesmerized. I forgot about the girl. And I just sat there and I watched and I thought, wow, what are these people? I didn't even understand stand-up comedy. I was not one of those guys when I was growing up, and maybe you were, who watched the Ed Sullivan Show or Tonight Show and said, I can't wait for the stand-up comedian to come on. I was more interested in the impressionists and the ventriloquists for some strange reason. They fascinated me. Because I guess growing up in Queens, Jackson Heights, Queens, thanks for the bump, everybody in my neighborhood, you're a New Yorker, everybody in my neighborhood, every guy in my neighborhood was hilariously funny. Everybody. So I look back now, years later, and I'm thinking, I got it. I'm the only one who went to it professionally. But there were guys who could tell incredible stories. They had the dialects, and they had the attitude. Characters, unbelievable, as they were telling you the story. Now, these guys later went on to be lawyers, doctors, and accountants, but they were just funny, funny human beings. So I always went on the stage when I first started, and it was like I was trying to make it like I was standing on a corner with my friends on 90th Street, Northern Boulevard, just hanging out, talking. That's it. And that's how I got started at the improv.
So you weren't doo-wopping like in the 60s. You were talking smack and telling jokes on the street.
I wasn't doo-wopping. I would walk in to pee in the public bathroom while they were doo-wopping, but I was not doo-wopping in the park. I went to piss after I played a game of basketball. But no, I was not a doo-wopper. But I respected them, but I never understood that you could make a living from it, or stand-up comedy, or standing on the corner talking to your friends. And then when I went that night, I said, wow. And it's fascinating. I had met her because I was at Queens College, and I went in as a political science major.
I could tell, definitely.
I was going to be a lawyer, but I think I was going to be a lawyer for my mother and father. I wasn't going to be a lawyer for me. I went to class and I sat there and I was fascinated by the fact that they give you homework or you make you study and you read a book about somebody else's creativity. You know what I mean? People come up with the law and they write it down and you memorize. And it never really, I'd sit in the class and I was very uncomfortable. As people, lawyers are important. I was not a happy guy in that class. So one day I'm sitting in the student union and a good friend of mine came by and said, Glenn, listen, my sophomore year, I found the class Easy A. He said, what do you mean? I said, what do you mean, Stephen? Easy A. He said, yeah, theater class, acting. You got to come. So I went in. I walk in that first day, Bruce. I see kids jumping on the furniture, banging their heads against the wall, screaming out loud.
That's for me.
Yeah, I could do this. I do this for nothing. I get credit for this. And that was it. The next 2 years, I just spent in the theater department meeting all these creative human beings, especially my wife, who I'll mention later, who's an incredible actor. She takes care of the drama side of our life. And I did shows. I learned how to be on a stage more so than I'd ever been. Because as a kid, maybe you were the same way. When I went to camp, I always seemed to find myself in the plays that we did that week. I was in Oklahoma. I played Conrad Birdie in Bye Bye Birdie. I stood on a stage by myself. And
Where did you go to camp?
I went to Camp Tranquility. Now, it was a settlement camp. Believe it or not, 3 weeks cost $100. So 9 weeks cost $300. Now it's $300 a day.
Yeah.
Camp.
Yeah.
But it was an experience.
I went to Camp Winston.
Where was that?
In Monticello.
Yeah, we were up in Albany.
Lake.
We were in Albany, right outside Albany, Earlton. Rip Van Winkle territory.
Right across the lake, I believe, was the Pines, and I think they've knocked down the Pines by now. But what an incredible time! And
yeah, sure. When you went there, it was
so I remember the 6 months sleepaway camp, including all the food. This is a long time ago, of course.
Sure.
I believe it was 600, and maybe it might have gone up to 800
for the whole summer.
Yeah, and now I hear it's like either 10,000 or
depending on the camp you go to, absolutely.
Yeah,
and the amenities. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
And an amazing story. 2 of my camp counselors, not camp counselors down 3 bunks down, 2 of my camp counselors. One, Marty Nadler.
No. Can you make a call?
Marty Nadler, and I tell the story on another video, but I was watching either Laverne and Shirley or Happy Days, and I see Marty Nadler. How many Marty Nadlers can there be? I sent him a letter, and he couldn't have been any kinder, and he invited me out. Gosh, I should try to get Marty on the show. My God, that'd be unbelievable. But I've tried to connect with him, but he's never really connected back with me. But maybe under this condition. And then there was another, I'm trying to think of another guy, a tall comedian, a Catskill comedian, and his son was my, he was like in the Alan King group. Gosh, I can't remember now.
It'll come to you, but yeah, I get it. I'm sorry, one of my camp counselors was Bob Duke Kamen, who wrote The Karate Kid.
Wow.
And I look back now, and he was always teaching us karate during the day. He would give us these moves, and I thought, why is he doing this? Years later, he wrote the movie.
Wow.
So, I mean, yeah, it's amazing how you go back and you look and you see where people go.
So the other amazing thing is I can't tell you how many people, stories about pulling them out of the library, pulling them out of law school. I mean, I did that to a friend of mine down in Orange County. David Wood said he was going to law school, and right on the show he said, I'm sure my parents loved that when I decided I wanted to become a stand-up comedian.
Well, look, it's a Jewish family. Show business was not in my blood. I mean, they're still the only one who's ever done it professionally. My mother didn't understand it. And then the thing is, life was made, it's sad to say, my choices were made a little bit easier because my father was killed in a car accident the beginning of my sophomore year.
Oh.
So yes, in a sense, I've lost my dad, and I do, and I miss him every day. But it made my choice to pursue. I said to myself, I only live one time, and I got to do what I got to do. For me, I know I love my mother, and believe me, she loves me. I had food, I had shelter, I had clothing, but she was not behind me when I made this choice.
Of course not.
And we'll talk about that in a little while too, because, I had to fight the ravages of show business and rejection and having to prove yourself every freaking minute, to going home and having to prove myself to my mother that I made the right choice.
What a life you crazy comedians chose for yourself.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. It's sad to say, I loved what I did, and I love what I do, and I still do it. And it's not even what I do, it's who I am. I mean, like I said, I think when we were talking, I kidded you about saying with the pandemic, there's no place to work for a comedian. I can't do Zoom shows, but I'm killing online at Trader Joe's. I'm killing with at the bank. I talk, and I just want to see people smile. That's what I want to do. But my mother always made it a little bit harder
Of
for me.
course.
And though she adores me and I adore her,
Of course.
she just didn't understand the lifestyle and the world.
So tell me about that next time you went to the Improv.
Right.
You saw a mind-blowing, mind-bending, mind-boggling lineup.
It's amazing how things just, at the beginning, they just came, they rolled into, one thing rolled into the next. Because then I went back to college, I was in school, and a friend of mine came by and he said, Glenn, you know what? I'm thinking about putting together an improv group. I said, what the hell's that? Now, mind you, we had been out back smoking pot every afternoon, doing improvs, whatever, you know, entertaining each other. And there were 4 or 5 of us. And we started to get a following because there was an outdoor theater at Queens College that we would play on. And people started to come. I guess maybe it's where they all got high too. But we were there and we would do shows.
Whatever it takes to get them there, right?
Absolutely. So, you know, but it was a fortune buying pot to get them to come. No, it was, they would come and they would watch the show and we had a good time. And then we did this for about a month and a half. They started to run the videos at the student union. They started a video thing because, you know, in college, kids want to do what they want to do. So the television department, the kids in the television department or the film department wanted to film stuff. So they saw us one day and they said, you guys mind if we film you? Said, hey, that'd be cool. We could see us. So they started filming us. Next thing you know, they were showing the video during the day in the student union. So it'd run on, you know, cameras all over the place. We started to get a following that way. And we're doing this for like 2-3 months. It was hilarious stuff. We didn't write anything down, but we started to develop pieces. And one day, on Monday, this little guy, John Scaturo, I will never forget, John Scaturo came and he said, I just booked this at a comedy club. I said, what? Because I remember, I got the improv in my head. He said, yeah, it's called the it's the Metro. It's in Queens, Middle Village. It's on Metropolitan Avenue. And the thing is, Bruce, again, how things lead to each other. I had just been to the Metro 2 weeks before. I saw David Brenner and Andy Kaufman. Again, Brenner blew my mind because Kaufman was unique in his own way. And I watched Andy, after I got to the improv, I watched Andy every night for 2 straight years. So it was fascinating there. But with Brenner, I had never seen anything like it. I watched this guy stand in the middle of a room. I'd seen the other guys at the improv, but that was 50 minutes. This was an hour show. And I said, holy shit, this guy he's captivating the entire audience. I said, I got to try this. So he booked us at the Metro. So we went there. We did it Friday night. We went. We invited the school. So we knew, it's very interesting when you know
you'd have a good audience, huh?
You know your entire audience by name, pretty much. So that makes it easier. And we killed them. We killed them because they were ready for us.
Wow.
Then Steve Epstein, the owner of the club and the manager of the club, he came back after we were done. He said, you guys are great. We'd like you to come back tomorrow. So we came back Saturday night. By the way, when he first told me this on Monday that he had booked us for Friday, I said, we have no act. We holed up together in a room for like 3 days, writing 25 minutes that we could, you know, go to. So we go we do the show on Friday night, blow the room apart. The next night we go, we don't tell anybody. It's all strangers in the audience. 180-degree difference, Bruce. The audience stared at us like we were from another freaking planet. To the point where the guys that I was on stage with bolted. They couldn't take it. They left. I'm standing there by myself.
Wow.
And you know what? I always believed survival of the funniest. I said, I got to do something to get off the stage and feel good. So I don't know, I riffed about something and this and that. I did about 6-7 minutes. I got a few laughs from a really hard-ass audience. I walked up the stage and I said, that was the moment I thought, I want to do this by myself.
Wow.
So I graduated college. The next 5 months, I guess, I started writing down, I started reading. I read a book called The Last Laugh. I don't know if you are familiar with the book. The Last Laugh was a book written at the time about comedy at that stage, stand-up comedy at that time, primarily written around Robert Klein,
Oh,
who had
nice.
become a hero of mine because I'd seen him out in Roslyn. And he wrote, it was his ascending to where he was. And so I read that book, and what he said was, when you get into conversations, remember what people say. If you're funny, if you say something funny and somebody says something funny back, remember that, because the conversations will come in handy. So for the next 40 years, I kept notes about everything and any little thing. You know what? It's true. I went back. After a while, I started to formulate bits, and I'd look at other pieces, and I could say, oh, well, I could put that there. That's how you build a show. I did. I was never that kind of guy who sat and wrote golf jokes for 2 days or mother-in-law jokes. Mine was more personal stuff, more truthful stuff, as much as I could do to be as truthful, but always knowing the bottom line was the laugh. So then I graduated college. I moved out the next day. I moved out with a friend, and I was working part-time at Barney's, the clothing store on 17th Street and 7th Avenue. And I was working part-time 6 to 9:30, and I made some money there, and I was in the city though, and I started looking at showcases. Backstage was a show business newsletter paper at the time that told you about where auditions were, showcase nights. So I started going every night. I'd go after I finished work at 9. I'd stay in the city, I'd change clothes, and I'd go around the city. And this was like in January, February, March, freezing cold, but I went. I stood there, I worked in front of dartboards. I worked in front of a bar. I worked in a basement in front of homeless guys. Anywhere I could stand on the stage. Because that's the most important thing. I tell young stand-ups these days, it's all about stage time. You write the material, but until you do it in front of people, and they tell you what's funny and what's not funny, because if it's funny to you, if it's funny to me, and I say it the way it's funny to me, 90% of the time, they're going to work 100 times, it'll make you laugh. Because the more personal you make something, the more universal it becomes.
Did you have 5 or 10 minutes? Really, was that good enough to do the showcases?
Well, at the time, you needed 5 minutes. You only needed 5 minutes for your showcase, for the major improv, and then later Catch a Rising Star. And then the comic strip opened up a little bit after that, which made it a third club that we could go to. But you had to do 5 minutes on stage for audition night improv. And I shot the improv, I shot for doing the improv audition night in June of 1975.
Wow.
So I worked for 5 straight months, January, February, March, April, May. And then June, I went to the improv, stood online in the afternoon, got a number, I think it was number 11. After 5 other guys had gone on, I did my 5 minutes. And the stuff I did then, I look back now, I didn't even do it after that pretty much. It was just something to get started, but it was the way I was writing. I was invited to come back the next night.
Nice.
For Bud to see me. Because Judy Orbach, I don't know if that name is familiar. She was the manager of the club.
Okay, I was going to ask you who was doing the inviting. Okay.
Yeah, Judy Orbach was running audition night. Chris Albrecht was there with Bob Zamuda, who later they were partners. Albrecht and Zamuda, they were comedy team partners. But Zamuda later went on to work with, I'm sure you know, Andy Kaufman, and produce Comedy Relief. Chris was just starting to, invest some money into the club. So, because Bud was on his way out to LA pretty soon. But he saw me the next night, invited me to come back. I was so excited. I floated down the block that night after Bud invited me to become a regular at the Improv.
Wow.
I floated down the block that night thinking, well, maybe I'll do the Tonight Show in 6 months. How crazy was I to think that? I spent the next 2 years going on 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30 in the morning. Dues paid. It's a dues paying business. And meanwhile, I would know that I would not go on till that late. I found a lot of other clubs during the night to work at before I'd head to the Improv at midnight. Now I think about leaving my house at 12. I used to leave my house sometimes, if I didn't go to other clubs, at midnight to go to hang out at a comedy club.
Wow.
Could I do that today? No. I've already peed twice by 12 o'clock. It's impossible. I could do it if I could pee and wear pajamas. That's just the way life is. I look back and I go, how did we do it? But you do it because you want to do it and you need to do it. It was a beautiful time. So then I stood there and I did my thing. And I went to Catch a Rising Star, which was a little more. Are you familiar with Catch?
I am, but I want to hear from your,
Yeah. Catch.
The difference. Wow. I want to hear this.
Yeah, Catch, the difference, it seemed a little bit more professional, where at the Improv you can make mistakes. It was the Improv. You could make mistakes. You could try stuff.
Casual. Yeah.
At Catch, you seem to have to be a little bit more on your game and not blow it as frequently as young comedians do. So, I went there when I thought I was ready with my 5, 6, 10 minutes, whatever it might have been. I was invited back there too. So now I had 2 clubs to hang out at after midnight. But you know what? Again, it's just a matter of being there at the right time. So, occasionally one of the guys that was a regular wouldn't show up, and they'd look around the bar and they go, Glenn, can you go on? And I'd be ready to go. And so it's all about stage time. And from the Improv, I was there so much. I started to work the door. I would answer phones. So I was there from 9 o'clock till, started to hang out there all the time. 9 o'clock till 2 o'clock in the morning. So I started answering the phones. I became pretty much, I hate to say it, I became the bouncer at the Improv. Could you imagine? 6 foot, 157 pounds at the time. And I'm the bouncer. But, I was just there pretty much because I was waiting to go on stage. And I started watching it every night. I stood there and watched guys after guy go on. And the difference between, I don't know now, but then everybody was so helpful. All the young guys, it was a camaraderie. It was a club. We shared things. Guys would watch you work and they'd go, Glenn, that's great. You might want to add this. And I'd say, oh man, that's a gift.
Or time it that way, or time it another way.
Right. You might
take out a word.
And I started doing it too. And then for some reason, after about a year of being there, a year and a half of being there, I was asked to host audition night. I became the MC for audition night.
Wow.
The guy who invited people back after a year and a half. Don't ask me why, but I took it very, very seriously because I knew how important it is to the guys that went on the stage. So in my time there, I invited Paul Reiser, Paul Provenza, Keenan Wayans, Robert Wall, Gilbert Godfrey, Mark, Lois Bromfield. These are the people I invited back. And then, I went to the comic strip, and that's where I met Seinfeld and Larry Miller, and Bill Maher was at Catch. I mean, it was a wonderful time where everybody shared their experience and whatever they wanted. We lived together. It was like comedy graduate school. We hung out together. We watched each other work. We helped each other with our homework. And then during the day, we'd hang out. And then we started to play softball in the Broadway Show League. So there was a team.
I love that.
Yeah, it was a team.
I was on the Improv team out in LA. I
was on the Improv team and I was on the Catch team. So I pretty much was playing softball 3 days a week.
Great.
In Central Park, which was my home park at the time. It was a beautiful time. So the point I'm making is it was such a camaraderie. If you talk to any guys from that time, leading to the 80s with the comedy boom, they'll tell you the same thing. That it's just not the same. There was no concept of show business at the time. Nobody was jealous of anybody. Nobody cared whether you got the job or you didn't get the job. If somebody did, you'd go, hey man, great. Can you get me in there? And they'd work to get you in there. And these dates that I'm talking about were all in the New Jersey, Yonkers, Westchester, right. Yonkers, Westchester, Long Island places. There wasn't traveling involved. It was a drive. You'd go, you'd work out. You'd make you $25, $35. And that's the way it was for years. For the first 3 years for me, that was the life. My rent in New York City when I moved in was $310 a month for a 4-flight walk-up on 58th and 1st. For my girlfriend and I, who's now my wife at the time, $310 a month. And you can't be homeless in New York City for $310 a month. You can't be homeless. You need $310 a week at least to live on the street in Manhattan. but it was there. I didn't have to travel as much anymore. I could walk to the Improv if I wanted to. I could walk to Catch. I could walk to the comic strip.
Great life.
It
Great
was,
life.
and then we went on strike because we started to realize the clubs were making so much freaking money. You know, at one point they were doing 3 shows a night on Fridays and Saturdays. And we were getting nothing. And the place was jammed. There were lines out the block, up 44th Street, down First Avenue in front of Catch, on Second Avenue. And we thought, you know what, we should be making something.
So wait a second, Glenn. So I thought that was just a Hollywood thing. Or
No.
is this the same time or before the Hollywood thing?
That's a very good question, Bruce. I think we might have gotten the idea from you guys out there, from the guys in Hollywood. Somebody brought it with, somebody said, you know what they're doing out there? They're demanding pay. So we went, okay, let's see if we can do this. And we did, because we knew we were the commodity. And we it was symbiotic. We needed the club, they needed us. We didn't ask for $100 a show. We asked for $25 a show plus cab fare. We ended up getting that finally $25 a show. At first it was just $10 cab fare to run back and forth. But that we were there anyway. So they started to pay us. And then the Comedy Cellar opened up a few years later, you know, in the 80s. And so you could live pretty much, make a living on the weekend in New York for the amount of money you needed to live in that time. I ended up doing sometimes 10 shows a night.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I would, but I don't know if I enjoyed any of them. I enjoyed the first one and the last one because I was doing my show, jumping out, running out the door, jumping in a cab, going across town, then going to Catch a Rising Star, comic strip, then going downtown to the Comedy Cellar, then going back to the Improv for the second show and doing it all again. But
all 10-minute spots or
15 minutes.
50, okay. Wow.
15-minute spots, so you had to time it out.
Yeah.
So it meant it was, you know, but you could make, I mean, there were times it was exhausting, but I was making $500 a weekend.
Wow.
And that was a ton of dough to make for doing what you love to do. You know, doing
With
stuff.
a $300 rent. I had a $300 a month rent when I lived in Boston, and what a life I had. You can have a life.
Yeah, you could. You could live like that. You could go to the movies. You could, you know, you could do your thing. You could eat out. I mean, for a while, I don't think we cooked in the little kitchen we had for 2 years. We ate out, but you can't do that anymore. And you know, it's a totally different thing. Then show business shows its ugly head in some ways. Agents show up, managers show up, and they're so important and they're so pivotal. But that's when it started to change. The attitudes of the comics started to change when people started to think in terms of a job, more money, more prestige, more fame. So, you know, those things, all important. And guys always committed to what they wanted to do, and they did their thing. We never hurt anybody. I think it changed years later where, you know, it was cutthroat, more cutthroat in that sense. I can't speak to it, but from what I've gathered over the last 15, 20 years, young comedians tell me it ain't easy. It ain't easy. Everybody's fighting for that 2 minutes of whatever they're looking for. But when I started, that's what it was. And then 1980 came, and I was on the stage emceeing an improv show. And it was a regular night. And then I get off the stage after like the first 4 acts. I go up, because when you become the improv MC, it was a very important role, because it was your show, but it was the stage time for me. I would go up and do 5 minutes in between every act. And sometimes we're 15 acts. So you get a lot of time on stage to play, to learn. And that's how my stuff grew, from on the stage. Again, I was never the guy who sat and wrote golf jokes. I later on learned how to write a little bit more for my voice sitting in a chair. But I was always on my feet working, so it came that way. So I worked that way. And that night, I seen that a man named Miles Laurie was in the audience. And he was a big, big manager. His major client at the time in 1980 was Barry Manilow.
Wow.
And Manilow at that time, I'm sure you know, was as big as you can be in the world.
Yeah.
And that night he was coming in unannounced to look for an opening act for Barry. And he saw so much of me. I guess I just hypnotized him because I get a call the next day that he wanted to meet me.
Wow.
And the next thing I know, he's my manager.
Whoa.
To be honest with you, Bruce, at that time, I was not ready for a manager. I was not ready for a situation with a manager. See, if a guy like you had said something to me, it would have been different because he knew nothing about comedy. He was a business guy. He was a lawyer. He was a he knew more about the music business
Right, right.
than he did about comedy. I mean, it got to the point where after a while, I mean, it was great at first because the first major job I had was Barry Manilow had just signed a deal at Resorts International, Atlantic City,
Oof.
2 weeks for $1.7 million. That's in
Wow.
1980,
Wow.
1.7. And he was looking, Miles was looking for an opening act to go in front of him at Resorts. And Atlantic City just hit.
Wow.
It was just the biggest thing in the world. And Barry being there, Resorts.
Oof.
And so there I went from making $50 a week to making $5,000 a week.
Wow.
But it was not, I mean, I did my job. The reviews were good. It was, I think one review was Glenn Hirsch had a spot you wouldn't wish on a leopard. It was not an easy spot because they were not only showing a 1,200 seat theater, but they were closed circuiting it through the hotel. It was
Wow.
huge.
Wow.
I did my job, and that was huge, and it was great. And that was when my mother was very excited when I could tell her I was getting paid this kind of money to do this.
Of course.
Yeah, she didn't. That's what she got, and she came down.
She understood at that time what it was all about.
Understood. Right. Exactly right. I mean, simple basic needs.
Right.
I mean, so it paid off there, but then in the long run, and I ended up, I signed with William Morris, was my first agency, and then I left William Morris, and again, never looking for it, never calling anybody. Things came to me very easily. I wish they hadn't in some ways now, which I would have learned how to work because I didn't really know how to work, to discipline myself. I was a comedian. I was the kid in the back of the room in school. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And I didn't know how to sit and discipline myself. There are guys like Jerry Seinfeld, Bill Maher, Robert Wall, Keenan Wayans, those guys, Joe Piscopo, those guys were disciplined. They knew exactly what they wanted to do and how to get there. I never had my basic needs were met the second I got a laugh from you, and I got to go home. That was where it was for me. So over the next 2 years, I opened for a lot of groups. I left William Morris. Miles took me to Barry's agency, ICM.
Wow.
I went on tour with Manilow, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons.
Oh my God.
Kenny Loggins, Dolly Parton for 4 years.
Wow.
And that happened later on after I left them. But it opened up this whole world to me that I didn't know existed. But Miles put so much pressure on me as a music manager. He wanted to see a new 5 minutes every time he came into the club to see me. Now, do you know how much time that takes to get 5 minutes of comedy?
Sure.
It takes about a year. I mean, I look back now, I've been in this business since 1975. What is that, 45 years?
Too many, no, a lot of years, yeah.
Oh, yeah, 45. But I've got about 2.5 hours of material. So if you break it down, I've been creative 3 minutes a year for the last 45 years. He wanted a new 5 minutes every time he saw me work. And it was a lot of pressure.
So that's why I didn't see you a heck of a lot at the Improv, because you were too busy working Vegas and
started working already. Yeah, when did you get there?
81.
I was the Improv out here, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, out in LA. Yeah, I didn't spend that much time here because by that time I was working my ass off.
Wow.
And so I would go on the road, and I was married by then, and I loved my wife, and I wanted to spend time with her. And she was working her ass off. She's an incredible actress who was on the road. She was in New York. She had gotten a play out here when we first moved called Tamara. That was the first interactive show that became a huge success out here. And Susan Giosa was one of the stars in that show, and she worked there for 2 years. She left that to go to New York with the show. She worked there for another 2 years, then got a show called Breaking Legs on Broadway that went for another 2 years. And we kept the apartment in New York City. So we were running back and forth. So my thought, I know now, I look back now, I should have been at the club more often. I should have paid my dues more often out in LA instead of just picking and choosing when I'd go in.
You know, it's interesting. I feel the same way about, I could have done more. Looking back now through more adult eyes, I could have put a lot more time into it. I remember having to worry about the cost of the long distance phone calls.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, back then it was whatever it was, half 50 cents a minute or whatever it was. And, you know, they put you on hold and you're waiting, and then you've got to negotiate with the clubs and get to know them. And all of a sudden you were getting like $200 phone bills back then.
Right. And you had to worry about that. Absolutely. Absolutely. In those days. Sure. Look, my mother, the same thing. I was living out here by then. I'd call home on Mother's Day. I remember calling one time before 7 o'clock. There was a time where it was cheap, right?
Yeah.
So I call her up like 5 minutes to 7 or something. And I said, Mom, happy Mother's Day. I just want to tell you I love you. She said to me, you couldn't wait 10 minutes and tell me you love me for cheaper? That was where it came from. But yeah, by the time you were in the clubs in LA, I was working, and then comedy clubs opened up all over the country.
Oh, well, that's what I was doing.
Right.
You know, the guys that were just my friends, between Barry Martyr. By the way, I'm sure you remember Barry Martyr.
Of course. Who doesn't remember Barry?
Well, we were roommates for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, him and his dog. Oh, what a story I have about his dog. He had one of those Chihuahuas, and boy, they were
Really?
close. So we moved in together, and Barry said, make sure you keep your door closed. I said, why do I need to keep my door closed? Just keep your door closed. So one time I didn't keep my door closed, and guess what? I came home to a pillow loaded with dog poop.
Well, he warned you, man. Yeah, but Chihuahua poop, how much was it? Right. But Barry tried. He tried to warn you.
He tried. He warned me, and
He's a character.
you know, I remember people sleeping on my couch. Paul Rodriguez slept on the couch. Firestone, I think he was there till I went to sleep, because Firestone wanted to go from being a sports reporter to a comedian or something like that, and he was over having Barry write all his material. Barry wrote for almost everybody out there. I mean,
Well, I know he wrote a lot he wrote with Seinfeld.
now they're buds.
Right.
They're really close now, but way back then it was Welcome Back, Kotter. Whenever he wanted to do his comedy, he worked with Barry. What do you remember about Barry? Because
Barry and I worked together up in Bakersfield, I think, and we went to a club, and not much, although he's a very quiet, shy guy.
Yeah, he really is.
And his attitude on the stage seemed to be totally different than who he was off the stage. So, I never knew who I was really hanging out with.
Right.
But a good man, a talented guy, a funny man, and I hope he's okay now. I hope he's doing okay. Do you speak with him?
Well, I haven't spoken to him, but when I was out in LA a number of years ago, I went to see him, and he was the same, except a few pounds heavier, aren't we all? And basically, he and Jerry were, when Jerry did the B movie, what was the name of the head B?
That's right.
Barry.
That's right.
So Barry's whole thing is Barry wrote for everyone, made everybody funny, got everybody from here to here, but he never got on credit for it.
That's the problem sometimes.
And I think
you don't demand in this business, you don't get. And and he deserved it. He should have gotten it. And I hope he got rewarded. I hope he got paid for doing this stuff, though. I mean, did he ever marry? Does he have a family?
No.
See, that's compensation in itself, you know, that you, that was, I don't want to say, I wouldn't choose, I wouldn't change a thing, but having a relationship to me is as important, if not more so, than and a family is than the business itself. Like I said, when I first started traveling, and I was making so much money that I'd never seen before from doing comedy. Now you look back, it wasn't that much, but then $1,200 a week at a comedy club,
Woo.
and they pay in cash. I remember one time lying in a hotel room, they give me $1,200 in cash. I was lying on the bed. I put it on the bed and I just lied on it. I mean, you know, those kind of things.
You know, when I was out there in the early 80s, you wouldn't know this. I was out there in the early 80s, 81 to 86. And then something happened in my life. My mom passed and it just knocked the stuffing out of me. And
Sure.
I left. And then I stayed away for 10 years. And I was inspired by, and I've talked about this on another other show. Rodney left show business too.
Yes, Jack Roy, right?
He went back to New Jersey and sold aluminum siding.
Right.
And then he made his way back probably the same way you did, going to all the clubs, and he probably opened up his own. But I was inspired by that. So I went back in 98 for 5 years. And I didn't try to do it the same way, but the first 5 years were really difficult for me because I had no relationships, I had no girlfriends, and I don't like girls. And I like relationships.
It's a lonely life. It's a lonely existence after a while.
It is. It is.
So I'm on the road. I've never been alone, but because I've been on the road by myself, but I've never been alone because I know someone's home waiting for me, or somebody's in another city that I can go see. And that
big difference. Listen, it takes off the edge that you might need as a comedian.
That's right.
When I think of an edgy comedian, I think of Bobby. I think of Bobby Slayton,
Right.
Who, even though he was married, he used, you know, a lot of sharp material about his wife at the time, and then.
Again, Bobby Slayton, a totally different human being off the stage than he is on the stage.
Yes.
He'll tell you what he says. He'll tell you what he's thinking right to your face, which I love about the guy.
We're both from Yonkers, New York.
Right.
And, you know, he went to the Hebrew school up in Manchester.
Yeah.
I was right there, too.
Well, he went to San Francisco. He started up there. That's where he chose. He didn't come to LA.
Right.
And he didn't really go to New York, which is fascinating to me. I really don't know what led him out to San Francisco. I should ask him one day. But he was never really not really a New York actor. I don't remember ever seeing him.
Right. He must have went right out to San Francisco.
He did. I met him at the Improv in LA. You know, when Bud opened it up in 80, he opened it up, I believe, 79.
Yeah, 79, I think.
Yeah, Bud, I was the last guy Bud accepted at the Improv before he moved out here to LA. And then again, like you said, you told everybody what the Improv looked like with the bar and round table. I would go in, but I did 7 evening at the Improvs. You know, became a regular job. It was a wonderful thing because in those days there were not that many young comedians.
It's true.
That evening at the Improv spurred comedy all over the country.
Oh, yeah.
Clubs opened up. You know, when we first started the Improv, you would go. There was a club in New Jersey that we'd go to, and that was like going out of town. And then
Fort Lee, right?
Fort Lee, Orange, they're very close to the city, but it was going away. You weren't in your home club. And then the first comedy club I did out of town was Philadelphia, then Washington, D.C., then Atlanta, and then they just started to explode. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Chicago, and you could literally, there were years I was on the road for 40 weeks a year. 40 weeks. And so, you know, doing what I love to do. I had a regular cab that would take me to LaGuardia Airport and Kennedy Airport.
Wow.
So in Newark, I would jump on a shuttle bus and go there. And it was exciting. It was wonderful. But
and that's what opened up the doors for me, because just because of Evening at the Improv, everybody said, I could have one of those in my city.
There you go.
That's when Barry said to me, listen, you have all these friends. I have all these friends. I'm writing for everybody. William Morris is not going to book them for a $3,000 gig in Pittsburgh. It's not going to happen. But you could do it. And I really resisted being an agent for, after he started telling me for weeks and weeks, because I didn't want to be one of those guys that nobody liked. Nobody liked their agent.
Well,
I didn't want to be one of those guys.
You're that's who you are. I could get it. I don't know if I could never be an agent. I would hate to be able to have to tell somebody no. That was always my problem. I have trouble. I mean, it was a bit about when my daughter was born, and people would ask her, "Can Daddy say no?" And she would say, "He's trying." She would say, "Dad, can you say no?" I go, "Me." I mean, it was something. Being an agent's a whole other world. Necessary, because comedians, you know that. Comedians, if they book themselves, they'll tell you, they're telling their friends, "I'm going to ask for $2,000. I want first class flight, and I want to be picked up at the airport." And then they get on the phone, and you go, before they say anything, you got to go, "I'll give you $700.
Take it. I'll take it.
$700. I'm going to stay. You'll stay at a Motel 6, and my cousin Bruce will pick you up." I mean, I'll be there. When is it? Wednesday through Sunday? Tuesday through Saturday? But that was the way it was. So with agents, they can do that. But if you have a really good heart, I'm not saying no agents aren't good-hearted people, but they can be ruthless, some of them. And, we're a commodity. So, I went to Spotlight after leaving ICM. Spotlight was the biggest agency in the comedy agency on the planet at one point. They had, Leno and Seinfeld and Reiser. The roster was crazy. And they were controlling all the comedy clubs at one point. And they were gouging people.
Oh.
Their comedy clubs, they'd ask for at the time, $5,000 a week. And they wanted half of it up front before the show even began. Those clubs couldn't last. How long could they last? You know what I mean? Comedy clubs by nature are a weekly thing anyway. And
what made it work in the beginning was the balance. We talked about having $300 rent. You could have a life.
Right.
It's the same thing. If there's a balance, everybody will work. Everybody will be happy. Everybody will make a little bit. And overall, a long period of time, you'll do okay.
But I'm sure as an agent, you saw the balance get out of whack.
It didn't, because I left in 85 or 86 or something. So it was still pretty civil.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. I mean, the worst experience I had with an agent, I remember I booked Murray at a club in Pittsburgh for just Friday and Saturday, 4 shows. And you talked about the terms. Murray wanted the tickets at the airport, waiting for him.
Yeah.
And he called me Friday morning at 8:00 in the morning. He said, "There's no tickets here. I'm not going." I said, "Murray,
oh boy.
wait, Murray."
It's like 7 cups of coffee right there.
Stay right there. I'll call you back. Or there was no cell phones then. I don't know how I did it, but I had to get on the phone to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh had to wire or whatever happened those tickets, or they'd have cash the moment Murray walked off the airplane.
Oh God!
I salvaged it, but imagine 4 shows in Pittsburgh sold out.
Right. You're giving me anxiety just thinking about what you got to go through. And that's just one of the 35 guys you had to deal with. I mean, I had trouble just dealing with me and an agent. But Spotlight was good for a long time. Comedy clubs were great. And again, you could make an amazing living. Amazing living. In terms of the level of the money you needed to live. Now you need like $2,000 a day. It's crazy.
So,
I don't know how to get started.
So the one thing with you being out of town a lot, and I used to get this, that was the problem. Number one is like what happened with Murray Langston. The second, and I'm still in touch with Murray up to now. I hope he does the show. He's sort of hinting that he'll do the show.
Oh, he should.
To me, there's nobody funnier on and off than Murray.
Well, you see his Facebook posts every once in a while. He'll post 40 different lines. You know what I mean? It's hilarious stuff. So he's still being him. I hope he does the show. I mean, why shouldn't he?
Yeah, but even when I spoke to Bobby even a week ago, and it was so, Bobby has an edge to him. There's a reason why he's called the bulldog of comedy, right? Pitbull. Sorry, yeah. So I called him, and he calls me back, and I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago he wouldn't have called me back, but he called me back, and it was nice. I said, Bobby, come on and do the show. He said, no, that has nothing to do with me.
Right.
I'm done. I've had it. I'm done.
Yeah.
I said, well, Bobby, come on. We'll just talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I said, okay. Great guy. Once you get past, the bulldog side, he's a great guy. And talk about people that he's always had, been married or a steady girlfriend. So, he did it right. When I went back the second time, when I went back the second time, I went out with my girlfriend who was eventually to become my wife.
There you go.
So it was much more of an okay time,
right,
and not having a girlfriend and being around all the actors and actresses and the beauty and the sexuality. I'm like holding on for dear life
right,
with no girlfriend. It was a tough time.
Show business is hard on so many levels.
Yes.
But if you need to do it, you need to do it. You know what I mean? If somebody once said to me, if you can live without it, you shouldn't do it.
And along those same lines, whenever somebody would say to me, and it doesn't happen anymore, but if someone said to me, listen, my daughter, she's 17, she was in the play, she was in the lead, she's beautiful, she has a nice figure. She wants to go out to LA.
Yeah.
I said, listen, I'm not going to tell you to tell your daughter not to pursue her dreams. But if she goes out to LA and comes home for dinner 6 or 8 months later, you might not recognize her.
That's true. It's true. I beat around that whole situation. I just moved out here. I had my daughter born in California, so she didn't have to leave. She grew up in this environment. She's been in a house where her mother's an actress working and dealing with that kind of craziness, auditioning, going on calls, doing shows, and me traveling all the time. As a comedian, the downside of having a family is it's always there, and it's 90% great, but you miss so much. We are people's entertainment. We are people's vacation. We are people's excitement. They leave to go see us, but we leave our people, the people we care the most about, to go get laughs from strangers. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I needed to do it. I did it. And I love doing it. But without, my wife and my daughter, I don't know what I would have at this moment in my life after all the years. Looking back.
Absolutely. And, we could go on for hours. I mean, this has been great. And I do want to go on, but, they say that people have like a 10-minute, attention span. And maybe we'll do another show together. But, it's all about balance. And one of the things that...
Did we go for an hour already? Did we go an hour?
Yeah.
You're kidding me. Bruce, you're compelling. My wife has to work with somebody, and I got to show you this. This is who my wife is. Suji.
Oh, my God.
A book, an acting book, and it's unbelievable.
Lift it up a little bit. Show it. Lift it up a little bit.
Bring your emotional core.
Susan.
Giosa, Giosa. And
does she have her makeup on? She want to say hello for a second?
Sue, would you like to say hello to the lovely Bruce Starr?
I do.
She has more than makeup on. Wow. No wonder why you're such a sane guy. Oh my God.
Thank you very much. She keeps me loved.
Glenn, I have so much more respect for you now.
Thank you
I
very
didn't
much.
respect you that much before. Now I have a lot more respect.
Hey, I got pictures.
Wow.
I'm sorry we talk so much about stuff.
No,
listen. 4 more hours I can go.
I want to do another show with you because we haven't even really, we've talked about a lot, but let's cap it off with knowing what you know now. And there's young comedians that are, still at Queens College. What could we say to them? This isn't 1980. This is where we are now. What could we say to them?
Well, here's the deal. What I see now, there are no boundaries anymore in terms of comedy. You can say and do anything and everything, and you can sometimes get away with stuff. The bottom line for me, I don't care. And my manager, Miles Laurie, the musician's manager, who was my manager as a comedian, said to me, Glenn, I don't care what kind of comedian you want to be. You could be the dirtiest comedian. You could be the cleanest comedian. But when you're on that stage, I want you to feel as comfortable on that stage as you do in your own living room. And he's right. And it's all about stage time. Anywhere and everywhere you can work. Write down every idea, write down things. You got to get on the stage. I don't know where you do that anymore. I don't know. Now you got to bring 10 people with you and they have to pay for the comedian to get on stage. It's pay to play. That's insane. So I don't know, Bruce. I don't know how they get started. But you know what? If they want to do it, if somebody wants to do it, you find your way. Bottom line. Anything you have to do. Put up your own stage and your own wall. But that's all I can say. Work, work, work. Stage time, stage time, stage time. Rejection, rejection, rejection. Learn.
We didn't even talk about the rejection part because thank God, I think the reason why you look the way you look good, because you didn't have a ton of rejection like a lot of the other guys. Hey, listen, who needs it? But
Yeah.
A lot of the other guys had a ton of rejection, and they're bitter, and they're out of balance.
It's terrible. I would hate to be bitter, and I feel bad for those guys. Yes, it's true. I took what came my way, and we came up at a time where comedy was king.
Doors were open.
Right, there was so many. They were looking for us. We did our job so well that there were 10,000 comedians in Iowa City, Iowa. I mean, somebody once said, every time a steel mill closes, there's another 10,000 comedians. That's the deal. We had an opportunity to work, hone our craft. We made it look so easy around the country with the clubs that people would watch us and go, that's easy. I could do that.
That's very true. Very true. I like that. Yeah. And, little did they know that you did 10 or 12 2 or 3 minute spots in between each act.
No,
3 years.
Nobody understands that. Wow, look how funny he is. Yeah, you should have seen me Tuesday night, December 4th, 1978, in the Village, getting my ass kicked by 7 drunk guys.
So when I say I want to do another show, the one thing, and here's how we could do another show, and I'd like to do it. Maybe we could do a part B pretty soon. I love hearing about your interactions with the guys, rather than just talking about them, rather than you saw this one, you saw that one. I'm so surprised I didn't, push you into doing that earlier in the show.
Yeah, you did a wonderful job. You talked me into talking.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And you do. I've watched other interviews you've done with the guys, and you're one of us, so you relate. That's the best thing about it. So, yeah, we'll talk specifics. I give you dirt on anybody you want.
So when we do the next show, and I definitely want to do the next show, we should pick out 10 guys that you were on the road with, that you had some personal stories with. It's not dirt, just, I want to record history. I want to record history.
I had Tim Allen open for me. I had Keenan Waynes open for me. I had Robert Wall open for me. I had these guys, but it wasn't. I had Paul Reiser open for me. We worked together. That's what it was, It wasn't about working. It was like, going on the road with Reiser. This is great. I had John Mendoza open for me in Atlanta. These are the guys that, later had their own shows. But we never thought that. It's just a matter of, they stepped it up at the right moment, and they wanted it, and they got it. I never wanted more than, like I said, the next laugh. maybe to my detriment, but certainly I feel successful, Bruce, because I live out in California. Every time I drive opposite of traffic,
Yes,
that's how I feel successful.
I know exactly what you're saying.
And I leave you with that, my friend.
Beautiful. Glenn Hirsch.
Thank
Wow.
you very much, Bruce.
What a joy. What a joy.
Fun. Thank you.
We'll do another show real soon.
Great.
Thank you,
Great.
my friend.
Take
All the
care.
best.
Yes,
I really
take care.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. You're listening and watching the Bruce Starr Show. We'll bring you more comedy from some of the greats from the 80s in the next show. It's not going to get any better than this. Bye-bye, everybody.